Live and in color from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful Southern California, and in parallel from the Turfs Up radio studio in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thanks for tuning in to the Water Zone show this evening.
All right, a pleasant good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, depending where you are in this wonderful world. And I always wish for a wonderful world. I know there's lots of problems out there, but I want to think positive. Someday we're all going to live in peace. Hopefully. Hope I'm alive when that happens, but what the heck. Anyway, it's a great day. We've got some great guests coming up, and I want to say, bring in Ms. Chris Austin. Chris, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
We're doing good, and we have our wonderful co-host here, Miss Tara Malali, only because I saw your picture at the top of my screen, so that was the reason. Not that you're second place. You're both special to me, and you're both in the number one spot, and I want to make sure you know that. So, Tara, how's everything going?
Well, I'm really excited about how full our lake is. That's super exciting, and I talked about that last week. But we're looking at potentially more precipitation, and with that, maybe the world's tiniest spell ever, but I'm really excited about what that looks like for us.
Well, maybe you can, you heard the train whistle, I think, and, I was hoping maybe the water train's going to go back east and collect all that snow that's going to be there and bring it back to California, and that we desperately need that. What do you think, Chris Austin?
Yeah. We won't be having any snow trains coming. That's for sure.
I do got to follow up with that because they were on like about 5 years ago on the show, and I want to know if they're still in business and what they're doing. The last time I had heard or read about them, they put a bid in for the what's the lake that smells.
Salton Sea?
Salton Sea, that they were going to help refill that. I know. I laughed at that too, but that was the last I heard. So I don't know. I know they bought from what I found out then. They bought more train cars. So they at the time I interviewed them, it was like 130 of them, and they said they went out and bought a whole bunch more. But I don't hear anything about them. I don't know if they're gone or what. But
yeah,
I thought the Salton Sea is kind of a leap. It's like fill the ocean, right?
Yeah, well, there were also folks talking not all that long ago about bringing icebergs down and let's see, what else? Oh, well, and every once in a while you hear about the people that want to totally replumb Canada and bring all that Canadian water down, just not to just California, but like everywhere. Yeah. It's the North American Water and Power Administration or something, and they're still out there. And I even got some gentleman sent me his paper. I think it might have been some kind of term paper or something that he wrote for college, all about how we could engineer a canal to bring water down from the Columbia River. Like, that's just great. But, the people in Oregon are not saying, hey, let's send you some water. So we'll see. Well, I don't know. I chuckle at these things. So.
I talked the other day to a gentleman who was on our show before, Brad Lozelle, and he was one of the companies that was putting together a business to move icebergs, and he sent me photos of their facility they built in Iceland, and I have another one in Finland, and they're actually doing it. And so I asked him if he could come on the show again and give us an update. I can send the pictures out, or we'll have them for the show. But he wants to come back and give an update, so that's interesting. There was another company we had on. I won't mention the name because we found out he was a fraud, and he was just scamming for money from investors, and that didn't work. But the guy, Brad Lozelle, and the partners, he's actually partnered with the government over in Iceland, so he's legit. And they believe that that's going to be something that they're going to be really doing. So anyway, just to let you know on that. But let's get into what's happening in California. And I guess there's some things happening about researchers with tracing climate threat through rising beneath California's land, all the subsidence stuff.
This is another interesting story about emergent groundwater. This is actually been written about in the Bay Area for some time, but this story extends the same kind of risk to areas of Los Angeles, which I thought was very interesting. But basically, sea level rises, and that's one way that you will see the impacts of sea level rise on your home or your property. And you could build a levee or some type of flood control, theoretically, to keep that out. But the other thing that happens is as the seas rise, they put more weight on the groundwater aquifers that are underneath these coastal areas. And they push down on these aquifers, and that makes the groundwater table rise up. So this happens like behind the levee. So you can have a levee that keeps out the rising seas, but that levee is not going to do anything for emergent groundwater. This is a big issue in the Bay Area, where they have a lot of a very shallow groundwater table in a lot of areas, and a lot of industrial use, so there's a lot of contamination there. It's the potential to wreak havoc on infrastructure in these areas when this emergent groundwater starts pushing up is just like incredible. We're talking about things built in the ground like utility chests and swimming pools popping up, and large infrastructure like freeways are going to be damaged, and the potential for that type of problem is huge, especially in San Francisco. But now what they're also talking about are these things called VOCs, volatile organic compounds, I think is what that stands for.
Yes.
And that is something that becomes like a gas in the groundwater, as it's an industrial contaminant, and as that groundwater pushes up, these VOCs get aerosolized and can creep into houses through walls and such, and can be, impacting the people that live in that area or work in that area, and they don't know that this is occurring. There's no smell or anything to alert you that you have this contamination in your house. So what they have done is they've gone and used a computer program to kind of look at data and kind of scope out in what areas of the state that you may have this issue. And of course that includes the Bay Area, but it also includes Los Angeles County. And I was looking at this map and kind of surprised how far inland they project that this problem could occur, like, all the way, like, as far inland as Norwalk. I mean, that's not near the beach. So it's interesting. I would not have perceived that there would be a problem that far inland, but apparently that could be. So it's a very interesting story. It's somewhat concerning, but I don't know. I have yet to understand how people are going to deal with this emergent groundwater issue, and we have a lot of people writing about it and talking about it now, but I haven't really heard the solution for that. So we'll see what happens.
The vapor intrusion is really serious, and it's not only from that. You got places like gas stations that went out of business, and all these other things that are, and all those things are going to start coming up into the surface and into homes and things. And you're right, it's really serious. And
there are areas in the Bay Area, that are very low lying, that are going to have big problems. Be impacted by sea level rise, both by the actual waves coming in, and also this emergent contaminated groundwater. And of course, usually, as seems to be the case, those areas are predominantly occupied by low-income people. So it just means more problems for the people that don't have the resources to deal with them, very well. So,
well,
yeah.
it's a terrible situation. I don't know what to say. And usually, like you said, these things really occur in poor neighborhoods, poor areas, and there'll be a lot of lawsuits coming up and things. And I don't know how they're going to keep tracking. Hopefully, this map and they work with that is going to help at least point everybody in a direction.
And they do point out that these maps do not mean that contamination there. They are showing the potential, the places you should start looking first. But none of this is like tested and confirmed. But they use data from information like fuel spills in that area and the industry that was there to sort of map out the risk. So it's not a map of occurrence, it's a map of risk, which is important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Tara, did you have something?
No, it's incredibly sad, and I'm sort of thinking about how this kind of this intrusion basically is not only affecting our central coast, but also the coastline, or not our central coast, central California, but also our coastline, which is why I conflagrated the two. So it's fascinating to me how much the spread of contaminants, seawater, there's these super fun sites really impact not just today's water users, but the next generation, the generation after. And it's those generations that are paying for decisions that we're making even 20 years ago. So it's very eye-opening to see how these things evolve. And the time to start developing solutions was in the past, but we've just got to move forward and see how we can address those things today and hold parties that made, maybe not the greatest decisions responsible for the choices that they made. So I know that, especially when we think about like PFAS, which is another groundwater infiltration, we're starting to hold those organizations who put that into the ground responsible for that in that North Carolina lawsuit that we succeeded at. And so I'm curious to see how that unfolds in the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree. But also, I kind of think it's related, where the Department of Water Resources finalized their best management practice, and that's supposed to address subsidence and protect our water infrastructure. That's a good thing.
Oh yeah, because land subsidence is a big issue in the San Joaquin Valley, especially where they have the land subsidence, which is basically we have the farmers pumping the groundwater out, and as that groundwater gets pumped out in certain types of soils, the soil will collapse because the water is no longer there. There's space, it will collapse. Does not happen in all the soils, but it does definitely happen in the clay soils, which are kind of common in parts of the San Joaquin Valley. So we have this land that is sinking, and when land sinks like that, you have irrigation canals running all over the place that are really set up on gravity. And now all those things are changing, and it really impacted the Kern Canal, which runs on the eastern side of the San Joaquin Valley. And so much so that they've actually done a multi-million-dollar repair on it. But as they're repairing the canal, the groundwater is still being pumped by the farmers, which is causing now additional damage to the canal. So they really had to do something. There's also problems with land subsidence along the California aqueduct, which runs on the other side of the valley. So, they really needed to do something. The way that we address this in California is through the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA as we call it, and subsidence being one of the undesirable results that the groundwater basins must avoid. So, this is the best management practice document, which is to give guidance to the groundwater agencies on how they can identify land subsidence and measure it, and how they might be able to respond to the land subsidence. But it is going to mean, of course, no pumping or less pumping. Less groundwater pumping, and that always is a challenge for the farmers, but the groundwater sustainability agencies are really working to address this, and they kind of have to. Don't have a choice with this. It's actually a serious problem, and it not only damages water infrastructure, but power lines and houses and roads and bridges, and when the land sinks, it brings everything with it, and that's not a good thing. No. So here we have this new document that should provide guidance to our groundwater agencies.
Well, I think they did a good thing. It took them a long time, but I guess you put it out to the public and other people to look at it, and you get back feedback and make the changes and all that. But I sincerely think it's one of the better things that they've done. Wish it was faster, but nothing's fast when you got to go through the government.
Yeah, well, also, implementing this groundwater management, the Department of Water Resources has been busy. It's kind of a phased approach because you can't do everything all at once. So they sort of worked up to this now, but they were working for many years on building the platform on how we're going to, what the plans are going to contain, and getting those plans approved and whatever. And after getting the first round of plans approved, now they're moving on to these other issues. The next one that they're going to be working on is groundwater depletions of interconnected surface water, which is basically, when you pump groundwater, you're basically pumping future river water or future stream water, whatever water course is nearest to you. And that is another thing that is to be addressed under SGMA. And at the time when they did the legislation, they didn't really have enough information to be able to start holding groundwater agencies accountable for that. But the legislation says that they can after 2025. So there's now a focus on interconnected surface water at DWR as they are preparing some guidance documents for that. So that's a coming attraction.
Well, it all needs to be done. For the upcoming governor's race in a year, I tell you, I don't. Well, no, I don't live there anymore in California. But I would like to see somebody like Wade Crowfoot run. Because he's very talented in what he's done in his career. He knows everything about water, and we can talk about the sites thing next. But I was thinking about that last night of all the people that would try to run. I think he'd be a perfect candidate because he understands the problems that we're going through, or that California is going through.
I am just amazed that we're here sitting in January. We have a primary coming in May, and I'm trying to see who's running for governor. The only one that's making any noise is Tom Steyer. Now, maybe because I'm living up north, maybe they're all advertising and hitting the people in the major population areas, and maybe I just don't get it. But, Tara, is there anybody else but Tom Steyer in the race?
I try to stay out of, just as a water district, whoever wins. I try not to get my nose there.
I'm just curious who it's going to be. exactly. I mean, I'm so surprised. What happens if we get to May and it's like there's nobody on the ballot? What do you do? Well, I guess there'll be people on the ballot that'll give it up. I don't know.
Well, Steyer got a lot of money. You know, he's not a poor guy, and he can afford to do a lot of things. And he's entered contests before, didn't win a lot, but I mean, just a thought, because I mean, the sites thing, like I said, I think that's one of the best plans I've ever seen, and there's just now they got to get some water rights. I guess I was reading that.
And that's expected. I believe there will be some kind of decision handed down in the summertime. So we'll be knowing if we'll be moving forward on the reservoir. You know, it'll be interesting to see how they move on that. And then after that, we have the Delta Conveyance Project water rights situation, which they haven't. I don't think anything's moved on that in a while, but there's a lot of stuff going on at the State Water Board, and I think they are probably having some difficulty with capacity to handle these like three major high-profile things going on there. But they're plugging through it, I imagine.
Well, the good thing I read today in your thing is how Californians have been using far less water than everybody thought, and that was a big concern in the meeting that I had went to about a year ago, and where they were talking about reducing the water usage even more, and how the water agency said we spend millions and millions and millions of dollars getting people 25 to 28% less water, and they're still pushing on it. Do you have that up at your place, Tara?
So, you know, we don't look at kind of the users in that same way. So, I don't have that. I don't have that as much as you might think. We look at more like the agricultural impact and all of that. So, Chris, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I know that they're starting to be looking at that because, you know, there's the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulation. And they recently, I think a couple of years ago, they lowered it, what the goal is for 2030. And there's some sort of group now that the legislature had put together that's going to go evaluate how cost effective these, you know, and if it's how cost effective or what's the benefits of this lower water use and if it can be any lower. So I don't know. We'll see. Those are just targets. You know, you're not necessarily going to be required to meet that, but that's what they're hoping eventually will be able to happen. We'll see.
You know, what people don't understand, residents, a lot of them, is that, okay, you can keep reducing water, and everybody does their best or tries to do their best. But a lot of the water agencies are saying, okay, we still have operations to run a water company, and they got to treat, you know, all of that can't stop. So that dollar is going to keep being there. That expense is not going away. Whether they
if you have a really good consultant that does a good rate water rate setup for you, you know, the better organized water districts can get through it. But there are some water districts that aren't. Their costs are set up differently, so it can be a problem. You know, and I think that the answer is that the water agencies need help to readjust their rates so that doesn't happen, versus, you know, telling people to not worry about conserving water. You know, we should never be wasting it. You know, and I think actually the best way is when conservation can happen in ways that are just passive, like, you know, low flush toilets have been amazing in Southern California, you know, you don't have all those toilets flushing 4 gallons, it's made a significant impact on water use. And provided, I admittedly, the first low flush toilets were, not very good, but I think that the technology has really come forward a lot. And having a low flush toilet is a way that people save water without even trying.
And shower heads and things like that.
And dishwashers and washing machines.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of, I know that we don't deal like a lot with direct to consumer conservation as kind of we more manage groundwater, which is what I was talking about earlier. But just from my previous sort of position, I think about things like recycled water and stranded assets. I think about things like the thing that I know Chris was mentioning in terms of rates is variable rates are often used in order to provide low-income households with more affordable rates. So when you have major cities who are trying to keep rates affordable for those who really, really need rates to be affordable, that's oftentimes when you get the reliability on that variable factor, which is if you use less water, then you're getting less revenue, which is causing a lot of the issues with this overall system maintenance. If you have forecasted that people are going to use X amount of water, and then everybody cuts so far back, and you've put most of your rate on that variable component rather than your fixed component, you then find shortages all over the place. Because now, instead of having a system that's ready for you to turn on the tap, you've relied on the flow of water, which is still absolutely legal, but can put people in a bind. Electeds, though, sometimes have a hard time shifting that percentage from such a high variable component to that fixed component because it raises rates on those who can least afford it. So it's not just the system that is in place in terms of how things have been done, but really looking at how to make water affordable for those who need it to be in that affordability range of what they can pay. And because of Prop 218, which love Prop 218, but it does not allow for rates to be used to subsidize other rates, right? So you can't use rate money to create a low income assistance program. That's 100% illegal because as Prop 218, you have to pay for the cost to deliver that water. Now, you can find other avenues of rate augmentation through leasing of land or other revenue streams. Sometimes there's cell tower leasing that occurs and you can use those. Sometimes it's going to the community and say, please, can you just donate? Some people can't afford their water bills. And oftentimes those are managed by a third party. But the variable rate part is the thing that makes some places affordable, and that's why they do it. So it's not just much like most of water in California, you can't pull one string without unraveling the whole system, I feel like. So this could potentially be a huge problem, especially for places that really invested in that recycled water, because now they have this, as people use less and less water, right? There's less and less recycled water. So that asset becomes less and less important and useful, even though you've sunk millions into your plant.
Yep. Excellent point, and that's very much a truism. So, well, we're coming up on our commercial break. I'd love to keep this going. No, it's just great.
I'll talk about that all day.
But no, excellent points, and like I said, these are not simple things we can hash out in 15 minutes. I mean, the discussion goes for years beyond us, and but it's good to know about it, and it's good for the public to learn about it. That's why we do this show, so people understand it's not as simple as everybody thinks it is. So, all right, Chris, we're gonna talk to you next week, and we'll keep reading your stuff. And for our listeners, please go to mavensnotebook.com become a subscriber to Miss Chris Austin, and you'll get all the auto water news you want every single morning. It's a great way. I read it every single day. And if you care to, you can also become a sponsor of that. Your little donation to that. She works 40 hours a day, right? And she's not on drugs. That's a good thing. But I don't know how she speeds all of that. But she's an amazing woman, and she puts out great stuff every day. And everybody in the industry who knows her thinks she's awesome, and she is. And we appreciate that she's on our show. So, Chris, you have a wonderful week. I heard it's going to rain. Put your buckets out, do some collection, if that's what you do.
I don't think it's going to rain here. I think it's just blowing over the top. It's all headed east. We're hearing about how terrible it's all going to be in the east. So
I'm usually 24 hours after you guys to get the storm.
Yeah,
Anyway,
stay safe, everybody. It's going to be a bad one. So.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Goodbye.
Have a good one. Bye. All right, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to be back with a great featured guest. And I'm honored to know this guy for about 20 years now. And but we did some projects together and been to a lot of events and that he put on. And we're going to tell you a lot more of what he's doing today. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Water is one of the biggest expenses for communities, HOAs, universities, golf courses, and resorts. So keeping those costs under control, especially when rates are increasing while water supplies are being reduced, are often essential to a customer's survival. Managing water requires multiple skills, which is why it's been complicated and difficult until now. AquaTrack brings multiple skills and technologies together to help large system users conserve outdoor water and improve the health of their landscapes. AquaTrack's professionals are certified landscape water managers and certified landscape irrigation auditors. The company offers audit services, upgrade advice, technical expertise, and water use monitoring. We already manage irrigation water for the largest homeowner associations in Arizona, and we're prepared to bring our knowledge and experience to help others, including landscapers and designers. Give us a call and hear how AquaTrack saved one HOA some 430 million gallons of water and $200,000 in annual water expenses. AquaTrack is Arizona-based, and you can reach us at 623-594-8689. That's 623-594-8689.
Moving up in this industry means getting the most out of each day, so you can focus on growing your business. With Site One, you're in control, and we're here to help. It starts with the right team. Our irrigation pros can help map out a complete, streamlined system that meet any requirements or regulation. And from the first dig to years after install, knowledgeable experts are available in branch, or resources are available online to help find solutions specific to your needs. Next, we make sure you have the right tools to get the job done with the largest selection of top brands in the industry, bringing the latest in Wi-Fi enabled controllers, rotors, sprays, valves, and drip components. And because hard work should always be rewarded, you'll receive personalized pricing and earn loyalty points on qualifying purchases to help you grow. You're in control. Site One is here to help.
All right, so welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone Show. Appreciate it. You're here with Rob and Tara, and got a great crew. And thanks to Eric, our engineer out in California. He's doing a great job. Anyway, we have a special guest who I was telling everybody sort of about, and I'll tell a little bit more about him. His name is Doug Bennett. He's the conservation manager for the Washington County Water Conservancy District in St. George, Utah. And I met him 20 years ago, and he was at Southern Nevada Water Authority, and we were doing water symposiums. And we joined a lot of things that they were doing for years and years and years since he started that on year one. And it's been great. But this is a gentleman who is very methodical in what he does, very knowledgeable, one of the most meticulous and honest guys. I know he told me earlier before the show that was some kind of funny thing, but it was the truth. And I don't say that about a whole bunch of people, but I do appreciate Doug. He's been on our show several times, and I want to welcome back to the show, Doug. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Rob. Hi, Tara. Good to be with you.
Good to have you.
So
yeah, I think Rob, the way you introduced me makes me wonder who it is that you met 20 years ago. You're so kind, Rob.
Well, you've been in some meetings where I'm not very kind, but and it wasn't towards you.
Yeah.
It was on the pre-stuff on the IA when we're talking about technology and specifications, and then they didn't want to have any engineering people in the meeting. They wanted all marketing people to come up with the spec, and I said, why would we do that? So those were the years, but everything's cooled out now, so it's good.
Yeah, we've come a long way, that's for sure. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
So that was actually one of the most exciting projects of my career. Was trying to get the smart controls more widespread and into the residential and light commercial market, and we've come a long way. Oh,
absolutely. You still stay in touch with the former madam who ran that place?
What do you mean? At SNWA or?
Yeah.
Not really. I see the folks from SNWA periodically, and in fact, they even come up and occasionally visit with us because we still have a relationship through the Colorado River. So my agency is on the Virgin River, and the Virgin River is a tributary to the Colorado. It feeds into Lake Mead, and so we still, we still have neighborly issues that we have to work out. And of course, Utah and Nevada have lots of issues, along with the other basin states to work out on the Colorado as well.
Absolutely. Maybe you can just give a minute or so, tell about the scope of all your territory is and how many people you serve and all of that.
Sure. So Washington County, Utah is kind of the doorstep to Zion National Park. And so a lot of people know where Zion is. Really amazing scenery. In fact, I'm coming to you from my studio, which is my car parked in my garage in Ivins, Utah. And out the front of my house are just the most amazing red cliffs. And so it's a really beautiful area in southern Utah. We're only about a little more than 200,000 people here, but we get close to 10 million visitors come through our town. About 6 million of those are headed to Zion and areas around southern Utah. And we're also a very popular recreational area for people that are looking to get out of the cold during the winter. So we have a lot of reservoirs, we have sand dunes, we have a lot of recreational areas. And so we host, surprisingly, on a per capita basis, the St. George region hosts more visitors per capita than Las Vegas. So tourism is a big deal here as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'll let Tara come in here a second, but I just want to say that you have an ad on your website, which really made me laugh. It says, "Get up your lazy grass."
Yeah, that's kind of risque for Utah, Rob.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Anyway, I want Tara to come on in and give some questions. Go ahead, Tara.
So, and I have very much enjoyed all of my trips to Utah. In fact, I enjoyed a road trip with my husband where we went to all 5 national parks in Utah. It was a magical experience, and definitely the Narrows is one of my favorite hiking trails of just all time. But what you do in Utah in terms of water conservation and really paying attention to what goes in the ground is so very different from a lot of different places, and I'd love to hear more about how you guys manage aquifers, because I know that there's a lot of differences in Utah as opposed to many other states that are also arid and dry, and it's because of that pristine groundwater that you guys really protect, and I'm super curious and interested in how you guys manage that. So can you tell me a little bit more about your watershed management tactics and what has really been working for you?
Yeah, you talked about distinctions from other states, but we even have distinctions from northern Utah, the Salt Lake City area where most of our population is, and here in southern Utah. So we're really reliant on the Virgin River, and that surface water makes up the bulk of our supply. We do groundwater storage, so we have a reservoir called Sand Hollow Reservoir, and that is a groundwater recharge reservoir. So we literally purposefully built a 50,000 acre-foot reservoir on top of sandstone with every intent that it would soak into the ground. And so we've been able to bank well over 100,000 acre feet as groundwater in that basin. And then that reservoir is the #1 state park in the state of Utah. More visitors than any other state park in the state of Utah at Sand Hollow. So we're really proud of that. But we are, being on the Virgin River, it's a really small watershed. And it's a very pristine watershed. The headwaters are literally in Zion National Park, right? So we don't have upstream users. We don't have large populations. We don't have industry in the upstream reaches of our watershed. But the river itself is very flashy. If you looked at the hydrograph, it is just crazy, up and down, up and down. It's feast or famine, and you never know whether you're going to be flooded out or be able to hop over the river on 1 foot, you know. So we have to have a lot of reservoir storage. That's really critical to us. Groundwater makes up a fraction of it, but even that groundwater supply is coming from the river as well. So when the river is weak, we don't see as much groundwater storage, and we can't always rely on the groundwater if the river is not recharging it really aggressively. So groundwater is an important piece, but the surface water is the biggest chunk of our water supply.
So how did you guys handle the drought kind of most recently, that really extended drought that we kind of all shared in the Western United States back in like the 2015 time frame? I know you guys had that, like, please let there be rain. I know that was a really tense time. How did you guys get through that?
So it was, I came here in 2023. In 2023, I was telling my boss, what is this, Portland? I mean, it rained all the time in 2023. Our reservoirs were chock full. I felt I'm sun driven. I mean, I want snow, I want rain, right, as a water guy. But personally, I like the sun to shine on me as long as it doesn't harm our water resources. And so it was cloudy all the time. I felt like it was raining every 5 days. It was one of the wettest years in history in 2023. Yeah. And we filled up all the reservoirs, and that was good, because 24 was mediocre and 25 really stunk. The snowpack was miserable, right? And so we came out of that really weak snowpack, but our reservoir storage is what got us through it. And we did really well on that. And our goal moving forward in terms of infrastructure, we've got lots of plans to build additional reservoirs. We sometimes get the opportunity to fill them up. And then we could go a couple of years with very weak snowpack, and we're going to rely on these canteens to be able to get us through the trip. And so we're building more reservoir storage. We had, as many people in the West did, these recent storms that were supposed to create snowpack. It was too warm, and it was rain instead of snow. And so that water went straight into the river. And our diversion, where we divert the water for storage in our reservoirs, only has a certain amount of capacity. So we actually lost some of the potential water supply because we don't have a big enough diversion and pipe to put it into. We had to let some of it bypass the community altogether. Had we had better infrastructure and potentially the slower release that we get from snowpack, that would have been a really great precipitation event. But when it all comes at once, that's one of the conditions that you have to plan for in what potentially is a very different climate future.
Sorry. Go ahead, Robert. He and I will just go back and forth.
No. I was going to add to that. I was looking at a forecasting map diagram that you guys put out, and it's pretty bleak going forward.
Yeah, well, as far as snowpack, one of our smaller watersheds that our agricultural users rely on is the Santa Clara River, and it is right at the record low in terms of snowpack in the Santa Clara Basin. But surprisingly, the reservoir that snowpack would feed into is about to spill. It's going to spill because of the rainfall. And so one of the concerns I have, Rob, is people, we have to work with a lot of people, and the public's perception is that if the reservoir spilled and Gunlock Falls runs, then everybody's like, woo! It's a good water year, but it's not probably a great water year. I mean, we want to have our reservoirs full, but probably the most important reservoir for most western states is the snowpack, because it's a reservoir where you've got reliable, slow release of water into a river over a period of multiple months. And your infrastructure is typically built to bring that water on when it's from the melting snowpack and not necessarily in giant, colossal rain events.
Yeah, the rest jobs don't help that much. I guess it's a lot of wasted water. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tara.
Oh, I was just going to say, going back to your diversion, do you have any species issues? I know that northern Utah sort of struggles with the mica situation. Do you guys have any of that you're dealing with, or are you guys kind of free of all of our endangered friends?
I don't know. Is there anybody in the West that's free of having to manage endangered species in the water industry? I'm not sure there are. So we have several endangered fishes in the Virgin River, and we have a great partnership with an organization called the Virgin River Project. The Virgin River Project works closely with us to manage those fish species, and in fact, we have a population of those fishes in our demonstration garden. We have a stream that runs through the garden. It's just water being recirculated from a pond nearby that's used for an irrigation pond, and we manage those fishes there. And it's a cool place where we can teach the public about these fishes. And it's important for our water customers to know. I guess what you were talking about in the first half, water is super complicated. I mean, you would think, why don't we just do this or that or the other thing? The reality is that you've got to manage the environment. You've got to manage infrastructure. You've got to create redundancy. You've got to keep the prices manageable. I mean, so many things going into it. And we're all trying to plan. And we're trying to plan 30 to 50 years out. Yeah, absolutely. And we're trying, we're looking beyond our career horizon for people that are going to be here many decades, several generations from us. And so that's a challenge as well, especially when you look at the timelines. I think, Rob, I heard you say in the first segment, when you do things with government, it can be slow. When you're building reservoirs and large infrastructure and you're having to partner with federal agencies, it's not uncommon for a reservoir project to take more than the span of a water professional's entire career. So you could come in as a young engineer and start working on the idea of a new reservoir and scoping it out, and you may not see any water in that reservoir at the time of your retirement party. And so you got to have a long horizon when you work in the water industry.
Absolutely. I hear you guys have a proposed construction of the Lake Powell pipeline.
Yeah, we've pivoted from that because the politics on the Colorado River and the conditions on the Colorado River are very difficult. So we've pivoted for the short term, and what we're looking at now is we're going to be doing a very large water reuse project. So we're moving to the one water strategy. Utah has a very rich history of what they call culinary water and secondary water. And culinary water is drinking water, potable water. And secondary water is raw water that just comes out of the river that can be used for irrigation. And for a very long time, people have undervalued secondary water because it's just not been seen as a valuable water resource. It was inexpensive. It was easy to get. It was often unmeasured and unmetered. And so that was a real challenge. And now we're reminding people, raw water is what we make potable water with, right? All water starts out as raw water, and every gallon is valuable, be it raw water, potable water, or reuse water. They all have tremendous value to us. So using that strategy, we're going to be building a very large water reuse project, and even that project has a multi-decade strategy where the first water is going to be what we call type 1. And type 1 water, you can swim in it, You can give it to dairy cattle. You can give it to livestock that are for food or for dairy. You can grow vegetables and even spray it on food plants. It's very clean water, but it's not drinking water. Our intent is to create a lot of reuse water and then be able to supply that to agricultural producers in exchange for some very pristine sources that the ag users use now that we can put into our drinking water reservoirs and improve the stock and the reliability there. So that'd be the first phase, but it looks all the way out at the potential that we're going to treat that water and purify it to drinking water somewhere out in the next generation of that project.
That's interesting, but that's what needs to happen. You know, it's like in the fracking business. You know, they have all this brine come up. What do you do with the brine? How do you get rid of that? What can you do with it? You can mine it for rare earth minerals and stuff. But I remember when it first came out in California, in Orange County, they called it toilet to tap. That was the big thing, and they gave you a tour for the public. And at the end of the tour, they're standing there, the tour guide, and they fill up some glasses of water and pass them out to the people for them to drink it.
And you can still, and in fact, I did that recently at one of the California plants. So actually, that term was coined in the media, and it killed some of the earliest projects. But it's important for people to remember that all drinking water, as clean as it is, including the water that you might buy in a bottle at the store, started out with duck poop in it at one time, right? So it all came out of a river or stream. Even groundwater would typically be treated in most places, but surface water is the bulk of the United States water supply, and it's got stuff in it. It had fish swimming in it, and it had people boating on top of it, and the key is the technologies that we have to be able to separate water from the contaminants that might be in that raw water, and you can do that no matter the source. And I'm sitting here in my garage, but actually here on a shelf next to me, I've got something called a life straw. And a life straw, I always take one hiking with me, right? But you can stick a life straw in a mud puddle and get clean water out of it, right? And that's the kind of technology that we would use to produce drinking water, is membrane technology to make sure you're getting absolutely pure water at the tap if you were going to do that.
And that's getting to be a wide open, enlarged industry right now. There's so many people vying for that position to get it, and then especially with new technologies in desalination and all this other stuff. So it's pretty interesting. Well, we're coming up to the close. So before we go to turn it over to NBC, but I have one question to ask you, which I didn't discuss with you. If your governor came to you and said, Doug, Rob said you were a great guy, and I'm going to promote you to Czar of Water for the state. What's the 3 things that you need to improve?
I don't know that I could even say that I have good ideas for other service areas, right? So I always say that water is somewhat local in terms of what people are willing to do and what projects they pursue, what resources are available to them. I think one of the things that really helps is to have funding for good conservation programs. It's really important for the state to help with that. We have some good programs here. The state has put millions of dollars into conservation programs and working closely with the district. We have a lot of good cost sharing. I can tell you one other thing, Rob, is I would not want to be the czar of the state's water resources. That would be a little much.
Well, I understand that a lot. Anyway, Doug, hey, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. You're always welcome anytime you want. If you ever need anything passed out to the public, we'll be glad to broadcast it for you. And we do appreciate it. And I said, for 20 years, I know you. You're a good man. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks, Dad.
Okay, everybody, we'll see you next week. And the most important thing we want to tell you is, if you like green, you got to save the blue. So have a good one. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
NBC News on KCAA.